How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we come back to you with the Week 12 around the NCAA Panther Nation recap show. Season 2 here of our Pitt Panthers Dynasty, and of course we are coming off of a fantastic victory, 37-19 over the Duke Blue Devils, led by an offensive explosion of Darren Hall, who ran for 210 yards on 25 carries and scored a pair of touchdowns. We had a couple of big plays. Of course, Jester Wee, a 71-yard touchdown on a little screen that he took to the house from Danucci. Danucci himself ran for 57 yards on a scamper in the second quarter to give us a touchdown. As we really traded scores in the first first half with Duke. It just went back and forth, and then we really blew them out of the water in the second half. We ended up with 556 yards of total offense, 389 yards on the ground, only 167 passing on 9 of 15. Obviously, that one big play to Wea was a big proponent of that. We were 3 of 11 on third down, so not great there. But, I mean, couple of touchdowns, 3 field goals in the red zone. Arguably, we could have done better, but holding Duke to just 2 field goals, 6 points on 4 trips to the red zone was an unbelievable performance. We did give up a ton of pass yards, but obviously they were playing from behind the majority of the game, and that's what led to that. Danucci 153 yards passing. McVitie 1 of 3. Unfortunately, not a great performance by him, but he did have a nice throw on the last play. So Danucci, again, he managed the game. That's all you could really ask of him. 8 of 12 and a touchdown. Did a good job. His reads on the read option were very good. That led to him having a 57-yard touchdown. Olesen had 68 yards on the ground as well. Henderson didn't do much. Neither did Whitehead. So, a little bit lackadaisical from those guys on the jet sweeps. But we didn't need the jet sweeps when Darren Hall had 5 20-plus yard carries along a 31, 210 yards, and he only had 36 yards after contact, which means we did a fantastic job of keeping holes open for him and just letting him run free. We with 3 catches for 120 yards, but he did go down with an injury, so remains to be seen what's going to happen there. Couple catches for French and Henderson, so on and so forth. Aaron Matthews, great game on the outside. We know what kind of blocker he is. Whitehead with a great game, 7 tackles. And he did have an interception, but because of the play, he had an interception, then he fumbled. Duke recovered, but then the play was reviewed, and instead they said it wasn't a fumble, and it would have just been Pitt ball. But for whatever reason, the game glitched out, and Whitehead didn't get his interception. So that's kind of annoying that it took that away from him. So we'll remember that Jordan Whitehead did have an interception in this game, as did Avonte Maggs. Couple of sacks for Dwayne Hendricks, who had a really strong performance. Dane Jackson did well on the outside with 2 pass deflections. So a great game all around for our defense. We gave him a ton of passing yards, but when you can give up 398 passing yards if you're not getting scored on, that's all that we really needed. So 398 passing yards for Daniel Jones on 34 of 49 passing, but only threw for 2 touchdowns. They weren't able to get anything going on the ground. Chris Taylor and TJ Roming did fantastic jobs for Duke. They're their 2 best receivers, and they had great games, but they couldn't get into the end zone. Really, one good pass by Jones that found Roming, and then another touchdown as well. But for the most part, the Panthers held Duke in check and did a great job. They'll take losing that passing battle if it means they're winning the scoring battle 37-19 any day of the week. And with the rushing that the Panthers did and the fact that Duke was running a hurry-up spread passing offense, the Panthers won the time of possession game 36 minutes to 12. Absolutely ridiculous in those particular stats. And on the backs of that game, we got some recruiting news, some commits to the Panthers again. Pitt is it. Litchfield 2018. Come on. The Panthers pulling in 3 recruits on the backs of this victory. Guys that all visited for the Duke game and surely were impressed with what they saw. The first guy is Daniel Jenkins, 6'6", 270-pound guard out of Chicopee, Massachusetts. So the Panthers going up to the Northeast to bring in this big boy. They fought off the likes of Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, LSU, but clearly not a lot of interest from those schools. Those were just ones that were high on his list. He's not a quick guy, but he's decent blocking. His stats are okay all around. Going to add some good depth for the Panthers as it stands right now. Of course, losing one of their starting guards this year in Brandon Hodges, so Jenkins maybe could develop into a starter down the road. Second guy, Austin Jones, 6'4", 290-pound defensive tackle. Of course, the Panthers lost Jeremiah Taleni was kicked off the team before the season, so that was a big loss. So the Panthers only have basically 3 defensive tackles right now because they have another guy redshirting, Lumpkin, who's just never really going to develop into a starter. So Austin Jones going to add some much-needed depth for the Panthers. Again, he's a guy that he can get off the block. He's okay, good tackler, not a lot of speed, decent strength though, and someone that will just help fill the middle as a depth play. But this is the guy that is a huge get for the Panthers. 6'3", 217. Pat Curry, a 4-star from Pittsburgh, Lower Borough, PA. It's a suburb of Pittsburgh, and he was not highly sought after. The only other team really in on him was Kentucky, but he's a guy that when you look at his statistics, he can be a very, very good player. Comes in as an athlete. He has the ability to potentially play quarterback, running back, or a safety position because of how well-rounded he is. He's a good tackler. He's good in coverage, really, really fast, good speed. He's got a strong arm. Accuracy remains to be seen if he could slot in as a quarterback-type player for the Panthers. Good runner of the ball. His carrying ratings aren't great, but he's still a good runner with the ball. So he's a guy that the Panthers could use him all over the field. He could be a future Jordan Whitehead type player if he develops well enough. I wouldn't think in his first year he would be, but in the future, possibly. So around the NCAA, of course, Panthers with their victory. Virginia upsets North Carolina, so North Carolina's going to need a couple wins to get bowl eligible. Florida State beats Boston College. Louisville over Wake in a huge blowout there to help Lamar Jackson's Heisman candidacy. Virginia Tech escapes NC State. Miami keeps winning, and Clemson fights off Syracuse. Deshaun Watson had 4 touchdowns in the first half before getting hurt and actually having to come out of the game, and Syracuse used 3 quarterbacks. There was a total of 5 quarterbacks used in that game, which was absolutely ridiculous. Another big blowout here. Oklahoma, who's had a horrible season, knocks off ranked Baylor 45-7. Ohio State with 3 touchdowns, 3 unanswered scores in the fourth quarter, comes back and beats Penn State 41-35 in a huge victory for the Buckeyes to remain unbeaten. Wisconsin over Purdue, which is a big game in the that half of the Big Ten as far as who's going to potentially get a bid into the conference title game. Texas over Oklahoma State. Iowa State upsets Texas Tech. Iowa State had 1 win coming in. They've now got 2 and 1 over a top 10 opponent. Notre Dame wins. Arkansas State stays unbeaten in this particular matchup. UCLA, big win over Arizona State. TCU barely escapes Kansas. Arizona over Oregon. Air Force knocks off number 21 New Mexico 37-7 in a blowout. So because of those performances, we got some big games to look at. South Carolina's Boosie Whitlow, great name, in a victory over New Mexico State, had 9 tackles, a sack, forced a fumble, and recovered a fumble, while redshirt senior quarterback Damian Terry from Michigan State, 5 total touchdowns in a just blowout victory over Maryland. This is what's amazing. Deshaun Watson wins Offensive Player of the Week. He played for 2 quarters. 10 of 16 passing, 160 yards, 39 yards on the ground, threw for 3 touchdowns, ran for a touchdown in a half of football before having to come out with an injury. He should be good to go the rest of the season. He should be okay, but he did have to come out of this game with an injury. And he still wins Player of the Week. Trayon Gray wins on defense for having an interception for Miami as well. So unbelievable performance by Watson, but Lamar Jackson, 3 touchdowns through the air, 279 passing, 60 rushing in the victory over Wake, keeps him at the top of the Heisman Watch leaderboard for right now. Deshaun Watson right behind him, neck and neck. And then last year's Heisman winner, J.T. Barrett, comes in hot with a 395-yard passing performance, ran for 20 yards as well, threw for 2 touchdowns, ran for 1 in the victory over Penn State. So he's making his case at a repeat Heisman, something that hasn't been done since Archie Griffin, also of Ohio State, back in 74 and 75. And then some dark horse candidates in Deshaun Kaiser and Luke Falk of Washington State, who have been putting up very, very big numbers for their respective schools. But right now, it's Jackson, Watson, and Barrett, the 3 of them fighting it out for right now. And our 2 lone, Power 5 unbeatens, Clemson and Ohio State, sitting at 10-0. They're on a crash course for the BCS championship game. Miami, though, may have something to say about it if they can face Clemson in the ACC title game. LSU, if one of those teams falters, may try and jump in. Of course, they beat Alabama, so they've got the tiebreaker there, so Bama's hoping for LSU to get knocked off. You got Arkansas State looking to crash the party, though, sitting at 9-0. They've got Troy next week. They got 1 first-place vote in the coaches poll this week, so who knows if they can crash in unbeaten and potentially steal away a BCS title berth. Pitt sitting there at number 9, 8-2, followed very closely by Penn State, also at 8-2 at number 10, which is about right. Pitt did beat Penn State in a close matchup this year, so you'd expect them to be ranked like that. A couple more ACC schools, Virginia Tech and Louisville. So you got 5 ACC schools in the top 13 teams in Pitt, Miami, Clemson, Virginia Tech, Louisville. So the ACC having a fantastic year right now as far as the top teams in the conference, and Florida State's even hanging out down there at number 22. So a lot of good solid ACC schools. Another under the radar team, USF 9-1, gets into the polls at number 25. So if they keep winning, maybe we'll see them in a New Year's Bowl. So a lot of teams making some noise late on the season. BCS rankings, of course, Clemson, Ohio State. If they win out, that's going to be your national title game. Obviously, a lot of football left to play. They each are going to have 3 more games, surely, with their, conference championship games that teams like Wisconsin, Miami, maybe in a Virginia Tech or a Pitt could sneak in and have something to say about the results in this particular matchup. You got Notre Dame, Penn State, Pitt hanging down there with 2 losses. Miami, Alabama, of course, always teams that could be worrisome coming forward. But our first bowl projections of the season are out, and for your Pitt Panthers, they're projected to go to the Sun Bowl, the scene of one of the worst bowl games ever played when Pitt lost 3-0 to Oregon State way back, I think it was 2007, 2008. Horrendous, but that would be a high-flying matchup. Arizona, who's got a great offense, would be a fantastic matchup with the Panthers. In the current BCS Bowl lineup, we got Alabama, USC projected for the Rose Bowl, TCU, Arkansas State in the Fiesta, LSU, Penn State in the Sugar, Miami, Notre Dame in the Orange, and of course the Panthers get robbed in this again because you can only have 2 teams from a conference in those bowls. That's why the Panthers get the Sun Bowl and not a BCS Bowl, and then Ohio State, Clemson in your national championship. Big games this week on tap that could have conference championship implications. UCLA taking on USC. Obviously, the Trojans without Sam Darnold, who picked up an injury. Josh Rosen is back for the Bruins, so Herbstreit likes USC, but UCLA probably favored because of their quarterback. TCU versus Texas Tech, big matchup here. TCU favored, and they're looking to try and come away with a Big 12 conference title, though they've already got 2 conference losses. Penn State hosts Michigan State right now as the Nittany Lions will look to bounce back from a very tough loss to Ohio State, so they're looking to stay on track potentially with Ohio State. If Ohio State loses their last 2, Penn State could still sneak in the Big Ten championship game. And then, of course, your Pitt Panthers taking on the North Carolina Tar Heels. And this is one of those games that for Panther fans could be worrying, because when you look at it on paper, there is absolutely nothing that the Panthers should be worried about this Tar Heel team, other than the fact that, you know, they will be playing in North Carolina, so they will have that home field advantage. They're looking to maybe, if they can win 2 in a row, clinch bowl eligibility. But when you look at the 2 teams on paper, Pitt's offense is light years better than them. North Carolina's rush defense is horrible, and that's the area where the Panthers have really been coming on strong of late, is their rush offense. The Panthers' defense is so much better than North Carolina's, even with their struggles against the pass, and North Carolina's going to be missing their top passer. And after 3 victories to open the season, they went 3-0 against not great competition, of course, but 3-0 to start the year, and then just hit their ACC schedule and got flattened. Florida State, Notre Dame, Syracuse, Miami all smacked North Carolina. They did get 1 late victory against Georgia Tech, but they've struggled. And of course, Nathan Elliott, their leading passer, will be out this game with an injury, so they'll have to drop back to their second-string quarterback, who's, you know, arguably just as good, if not better. He just hasn't had the starting job. They do have, of course, a fantastic running back in Elijah Hood that if he gets going, we know what the Panthers have struggled against those couple of times this year, and it was running backs who did very well. Wayne Gallman, of course, for Clemson, and then for Boston College, Hilliman had a fantastic game and nearly let the Eagles upset the Panthers in that particular matchup. So with Elliott out, you would expect them to lean on Elijah Hood and his, you know, ability and what he can do. The other thing is the Panthers' passing game. You know, they need to get the running game going because North Carolina has some fantastic defensive backs, Stewart, Miles Jr., and with Jester Weah going to be out of this game with back injury, the Panthers, you know, don't have a lot of number 1 type receiver threats. They got some solid receivers, of course, Henderson in the slot, Maurice French, who's been coming on of late, Aaron Matthews, but nobody that's a real superstar catching the ball. So the Panthers are going to have to win the battle on the ground if they want to come away with a victory here. And it's easier said than done. There's no doubt about that, especially playing in a hostile environment. Caleb Henderson is going to be the guy under center for the Tar Heels. Not as quick as Elliott, so the Panthers maybe will look to drop a few back because the threat of Henderson scrambling is probably a little bit smaller, but he's a little bit better of a passer. So that's something that the Panthers will have to watch out for as well. And the Panthers, of course, we know what they're capable of as we look at our schedule. 2 wins on the trot, beating Georgia Tech and Duke, not the best of teams, and 3 in a row, Virginia. But the Panthers have struggled whenever facing a team that's able to run the ball on them. And for the Panthers, Quadri Olson's still their leading rusher, 898 yards, but Darren Hall quickly following up on him after a couple of really strong games, 100+ in the win over Virginia. I think he had 70 or so in the win over Georgia Tech, and then 210 in the win over Duke. So you expect that two-headed rushing attack of Olson and Hall to be what the Panthers will lean on. DiNucci just looking to manage the game again. He's done a good job limiting his turnovers, but with no Jester Weah available, you wonder how much the Panthers will really want to put the ball in the air, knowing they don't have a superstar receiver to go up and catch it. So with that said, we still think the Panthers should come out of this with a victory. Of course, North Carolina's just been too mistake-prone to be able to win it, but it's going to be a tough game. Let us know who you think is going to win in the comments. Be sure to leave a like on the video. Subscribe. As always, hail to Pitt. We'll see you soon, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.